What is a computer? Is it a digital Celebris GL5133 that was new in 1996? Or is it a Toshiba EX14B? Or is it a Modicon 140? Or is it an Allen Bradley PLC 540E? Or is it an Allen Bradley Slick 503? Or is it a Direct Logic DL05? Or is it a Unitronics 130? Or is it a Arduino Duo Milanovi? What is a computer? A computer has a CPU, a central processing unit. In our digital Celebris, that CPU was a P5 running near 60 megahertz, socket 4, a 64-bit data bus, 32-bit address bus, and this is the heat sink. In those days, didn't need a fan, mounted directly on top. But very shortly thereafter, fans were mounted directly on top. Here's the same CPU that we could open and see inside. Little tiny gold wires connecting the CPU. Later on, later versions, the Pentium 2 had more I/O pins and other supporting chips. So a computer has a CPU. Our Toshiba has a CPU. Our Modicon 140 has a CPU card. And our Allen Bradley has a CPU card. This whole card is a CPU card. Our Allen Bradley Slick 503 has a CPU card. That's this one. And here's another one of those. We see integrated circuits that form the CPU. Our Arduino has a CPU. It's in this little chip. Our Unitronics Vision 130 has a CPU. And our Direct Logic 05 has a CPU. Chips inside, integrated chips inside, make the CPUs of all of these. A computer has memory. Our digital Celebris has memory. It has 16 megabytes of RAM. Our Toshiba has memory to support the CPU. Our Modicon 140 has memory in the CPU module. Our PLC 5 has memory in the CPU module. Our Slick 503 has memory in the CPU module, and that memory can be seen here as one of those chips. Our Unitronics 130 PLC has memory, and our Direct Logic 05 PLC has memory. It's important to be able to program these computers, that is, to get information into the computers. Well, there's a keyboard and a mouse. That's an entryway into a computer. For our Toshiba PLC, there is a handheld programmer that allows the computer program to be entered. All of these PLCs, the Modicon, the PLC5, the SLC 503, the Unitronics 130, the DL05, the Arduino microprocessor, all of these are programmed with a modern separate computer running the latest software. It's important to get the information out of the computer, and one way to get the information out of the computer is with a monitor. The handheld programmer with the Toshiba also has an LCD screen that allows the computer results to be displayed so that we can see what the computer is doing. The Modicon 140 allows this programming computer to serve as an output device. So does the PLC5. So does the SLC 503. The Arduino microprocessor allows an LCD display to be connected so we can see what's going on. The Unitronics 130 has an LCD screen that allows us to access what's going on inside the PLC. And there are separate LCD devices. This one can work with the Allen Bradley PLCs. After we program the PC, it's important to save that program. Back in 1978, the program could be stored on floppy disk. The disks were truly floppy back then and held up to 360 kilobytes. A few years later, in 1982, the capacity grew to 1.2 megabytes. And then a few years later, the floppy disks transformed to a hard shell holding 1.4 megabytes. Floppy disk drives were used back then. Hard disks were used to store the data as well, so that when the power was removed, the information, the program remained. The hard disk of our digital Celebris had a 1.7 gigabyte capacity. It also had a CD-ROM, or CD reader, but not a writer yet. Our Toshiba PLC has a memory module, a ROM module that can be programmed, and the program will remain even after the power is removed. Our Modicon PLC has a battery supported system. The battery, even when the power is removed, the battery keeps the memory module from losing the program. Our PLC 5 has a battery backup system. Our SLC 500 has a battery backup system. Our Arduino has flash memory, does not require a battery. The memory is all contained in that one chip. Our Unitronics 130 has flash memory, does not require a battery. And our Direct Logic 05 also uses flash memory to retain the program even when the power is removed. Computers require power supplies. Some module that receives power externally and then converts that power to different values of DC voltage. Plus 5 volts, minus 5 volts, plus 3.3 volts, plus 12 volts, minus 12 volts, plus 5 volts. This is the power supply that converts 120 volts AC into multiple DC voltage levels that are required by all of the circuits of the computer. Our Toshiba is powered externally with 120 volts AC. Internally converts to the DC values required to support the internal workings. Our Modicon PLC has 120 volts input. It has a power supply module, an entire module devoted to the power supply. Our PLC 5 has an entire module devoted to converting 120 volts into the DC voltage levels required by the rest of the PLC. The SLC 500 system is similar. This is the power supply, 120 volts input. This is the piece that converts to lower DC voltage levels required by the rest of the PLC. The Direct Logic 05 requires 120 volts input. Internally it converts to the required DC voltage levels. Our Unitronics 130 requires 24 volts DC for its power, and it internally converts to the other DC voltage levels that are required. Our Arduino microprocessor takes its power from the supporting computer USB cable. Computers require the capability of connecting to external devices. The RS-232 cable on our digital Celebris provided that capability. All of our PLCs have that capability. All of these pins support externally connected devices. Our high-end Modicon PLC has 16 digital inputs and 16 relay outputs. Our high-end Allen Bradley PLC 5 has 2 AC input modules at 120 volts and 2 AC output modules at 120 volts. Each one supporting up to 18 separate external devices. Our SLC 500 system has an input module capable of supporting 16 inputs and 8 outputs, and looks like 4 analog inputs, and there are other input outputs that are also available. Our Arduino microprocessor has ways to connect pins to connect to external devices. Our Unitronics PLC allows external devices to be connected. Our DirectLogic 05 has input and output connection capability. An important connection to the computers is Ethernet. Our digital Celebris had Ethernet capability. Our PLC 5 has Ethernet capability. Our Unitronics 130 has Ethernet capability. And even our Arduino, with a separate module not shown here, supports Ethernet capability.